we're going to talk about how, if we were not all distracted by the Republican Party's enormous identity crisis and its efforts to dismantle democracy, we would be focused instead on what Washington needs to get done. The actual work of legislating, including crucial infrastructure repairs that this country has been putting off for decades. This is the Hernando de Soto Bridge. If you have ever been to Memphis, maybe it looks familiar. The bridge connects Memphis to Arkansas over the Mississippi River on Interstate 40. But it is now closed after engineers discovered a dangerous crack in a steel beam. Emergency repairs are now underway, but could take months. Also, the pipeline that stretches from Texas to my home state of New Jersey, now back online after the Colonial Pipeline Company paid $5 million to the company behind a massive hack. But the supply chain won't be restored to normal for a couple of days. Cities in Georgia and North Carolina have had shortages, with 60 to 70% of stations without gas. There have been long lines up and down the East Coast as the shortage causes panic buying. All of it is a reminder of how fragile the framework of this country really is. Senator Mitch McConnell tried to remind Democrats that none of this will get fixed, that the infrastructure bill won't get passed without him.
I don't think they can pass this second effort through a reconciliation package. In other words, I don't think they can get their own ducks in a row. And so they're coming to us, and that's generally how you reach bipartisan agreements.
And the Biden administration still appears open to finding other ways of paying for the infrastructure plan than the corporate tax hike that McConnell has declared off limits.
We can't lose focus on the actual need here. We've got a major bridge out of commission. We've been reminded in a very blunt way with the pipeline issues just how important infrastructure is. What we definitely can't afford is to do nothing.
For more, I want to bring in Senator Alex Padilla, who just yesterday had a hearing on the essential role that immigrant workers play in keeping this country running. Senator, thank you so much for your time. You are here because I do want to talk with you about essential workers. But I have to ask you, your colleagues on Capitol Hill are also in the middle of a meltdown. The Republican Party still betting all of its chips on Donald Trump. How do you see that playing out for them going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, and you don't just see it playing out going forward, but each and every day, whether it's the dynamics on the floor of the Senate and, what is done with, pretty significant bipartisan support versus what's, raised within. You see it playing out in committee. The rational minds that come, offering amendments, asking thoughtful questions of witnesses or negotiating a bill versus, who comes to give a bombastic, lecture talking down to everybody and then leaving without making any meaningful contribution to whether it's immigration reform, whether it's the infrastructure package, whether it's fundamental voting rights. How we're relitigating that in the year 2021 is beyond me, but that's Congress these days.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about bipartisan efforts that are most happening on the DL. I want to ask you briefly about the infrastructure bill. Are you happy with where you see those talks going?
Look, I am encouraged. I am optimistic. A big piece of this is not just the genuine effort that President Biden and Senate leaders, including every committee chair that I know, in trying to reach a bipartisan accord. We know that the infrastructure across the country, red states and blue states, needs attention. And we have a much bigger opportunity than to just address some deferred maintenance, as important as that is. We can invest in our infrastructure, put a heck of a lot of people to work in good paying jobs, better protect the environment, better protect our public health in the process if the political will is there. And just in case, we've already gotten the signal from the Senate parliamentarian that this can be done through the reconciliation process. So it's not ideal, but like with the American Rescue Plan, the need for a better code response was so urgent. If it took a couple of all-nighters and the bare minimum 51 votes, then that's what we'll have to do.
I often wonder if the Senate parliamentarian imagined that they would play such a pivotal role in the first year of the Biden administration. Speaking of infrastructure, essential workers are the backbone of our economy, including and especially undocumented workers. I want to play some sound of an exchange during the hearing you chaired and get your reaction on the other side. Take a listen.
But even when the pandemic ends, so many farm workers will be at risk of deportation. My question is this, Mr. Goldstein, what would happen to our nation's food supply if undocumented farm workers were deported?
We depend on immigrants to produce our food in this country. And a majority of those immigrants are undocumented immigrants. And among the 2.4 million, at least half are undocumented. We are, if any significant number of them were to be deported, there would be a catastrophe.
Senator, there was a lot of focus on essential workers during the early days of the pandemic. You and I spoke about it at the time. How are you making sure that they aren't forgotten during the recovery, especially given that, in my imagination, if there is not the political will to do something about this now, I am not sure when there will ever be.
Right. But, there were some signs of hope yesterday. There was a significant bipartisan recognition that immigrants, essential workers are certainly value added. And let me just underscore the points. While they have been most recognized during the pandemic as a result of the pandemic, we know they've been essential to our country and to our economy since long before the pandemic. And what we're trying to do with the hearing this week is not just raise awareness and elevate the issue, trying to gain momentum, but really appeal to the conscience of everybody. Every post that you've seen this last year, every tweet that you've seen this last year, the banging of pots, the heroes work here signs. If we genuinely have that kind of gratitude for essential workers and call them heroes, let's treat them as such, to recognize that more than 5 million government-recognized essential workers are not just immigrants, but undocumented immigrants. My God, they have earned the ability to live without fear of deportation and a pathway to citizenship.
Very often, for a very good reason, when we have this conversation about immigration, we keep our focus on the human rights, the civil rights of these immigrants. At the same time, there is an economic case to be made here that America needs these immigrants. As you were having your meeting yesterday, I wonder what came to the fore for you. What sort of was most interesting or compelling as it relates specifically to the way in which America's economy relies on immigrants?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things. Again, the bipartisan recognition of the value added of immigrants in our workforce in so many sectors. It's not just in agriculture. It's not just in food processing plants. It's in healthcare. It's in construction. It's in transportation. It's across the board. And we did have some of the witnesses make the economic case. If the justice and moral imperative doesn't get you, let's look at the economic contributions of immigrants. They pay state and federal taxes. They're contributing to the economy. Our economy wouldn't thrive without them. But also the recognition that when more immigrants become citizens, not only their economic position is strengthened, but they contribute even further to the economy of the nation. And, yesterday those stories were absolutely compelling. And, I hope as a result, we're getting, one step closer to updating our nation's immigration laws. The other thing that sort of caught people by surprise in talking about who it is that we're talking about when it comes to the millions of undocumented immigrants living in the country. On average, immigrant essential workers have been here for 18 years, right? These aren't people who showed up a month ago, a year ago, a couple of years ago. They have spent a good part of their life, if not their vast majority of their life, here in America. They're Americans in every sense, except for the piece of paper, but that piece of paper is important.
At a hearing today with Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, Senator Romney presented some misleading numbers he got from Senator Johnson that falsely make it seem as if President Biden inherited falling numbers at the border, when in fact, during the pandemic, border apprehensions went up for 9 straight months. Let me play you some of that sound. Take a listen.
Is this not a massive failure that would suggest that the administration needs to take immediate action to remedy what we're seeing here?
Senator, we have taken immediate action with respect to the unaccompanied children, and we've
is the number coming down?
And we are addressing that challenge with increasing efficiency every single day.
Senator, no one is disputing that what is happening at the border needs to be fixed, but it's disingenuous, to say the least, to try to continue to paint this as a problem that started with President Biden once he took office. I mean, where do you need your Republican colleagues to be in order to really begin solving what we're watching happen at the U.S.-Mexico border?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things. With so many other issues, my God, can we just start with recognizing the truth? And facts, because the fact is numbers are actually way down from just a couple of months ago. The number of apprehensions, the number of children in custody, the number of hours that children are in custody before, being moved on to Health and Human Services and being connected with their potential sponsors as asylum claims are being processed. The other thing that, I hate to be cynical, but I've been hearing it so much over the last couple of months. Republicans say they want to talk about, undocumented immigrants and immigration reform, but not until the situation at the border gets under control. It is under control. That's why the numbers have been what they are of, children and families in custody. But that's a separate group than the 11 million undocumented immigrants that are here, that have been here. Like I said, for the adults that are working on average 18 years, paying taxes, contributing to the economy, let's not let the situation at the border be an excuse for not doing what's right by not just dreamers, not just essential workers, not just farm workers, but so many more.
We do have reporting, NBC News reporting that the family of a 15-year-old migrant boy being transferred from HHS custody says he was kept on a bus for 4 days. He was not the only child waiting overnight. Senator, with stories like these still emerging, what more do you want to see the Biden administration doing?
Yeah, look, absolutely unacceptable, number one. Number two, if we're dealing with honesty, let's recognize that the Biden administration inherited a mess from the prior administration, not just in terms of failed leadership, bad policy and cruelty, but literally reducing the resources with which federal departments and agencies had to do their work. So the Biden administration has turned it around a long way. We clearly have more work to do. I understand a case like this is very much an exception to the rule, but our role as Congress is to make sure that there's the proper oversight and accountability to ensure that it's an exception, not the rule, and that we can take whatever steps necessary to keep it from happening again.
All right, Senator Alex Padilla, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mehdi Hasan. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more of the Mehdi Hasan Show by clicking on any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thank you for watching.